Okay, part two. We've had good chat again, sort of about your trajectory. So you're gonna make the next step at some point here. Maybe it's 20. It's gonna happen. I'm pretty sure. I'm just gonna say that for you. I think you have the talent and results. It's just a question of when and how. And it will be exciting to see you at hopefully some other races. Not that we don't want to see you in New York City, but. I'm just gonna be a little provocative and say you kind of cleaned up in New York City this year. You won the Boyd Cup overall. You were, and I only see the women's races in passing, as we are both in the park at the same racing at the same time. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of it. I look at the results later, and I know you were always, and I always probably understatement, but you were up there and very consistently, and you had a teammate sometimes up there too with you. And it really looked like, I think this is like one of those where we can talk about somebody dominating a season. Did you come into that with that expectation, which once again, you had just more recently started, you had the good result in 2020, you were training with power numbers, you said you have a coach who's at Tailwind, right?
Yeah,
Ryan at Tailwind. So I'm sure some people are telling you you're doing well, you're competitive. You probably noticed that on team rides too, compared to your teammates, that you're doing well. Were you expecting that in that season? How? But let's start with that. Were you expecting that, and how did that for you develop over the season that it maybe changed your perspective too on you as a bike racer and how you approach the races?
Yeah. So as a team, we talk about our goals personally, and as a team in November before the season. And so it was discussed that I was a 4 at the time, okay, I want to be a Cat 2 by the end of the season. I think that's possible if I keep winning races. Boyd Cup was a big goal. I didn't know that it would be attainable until halfway through the season. But okay, I just got to keep locking this down. And Team Cup was a huge goal.
Right.
So yeah, it was I kept getting results. I went into the season with the mindset that, I'm gonna dominate this. Having it in your mind. I still have a lot of fun. While I'm racing, I'm having a lot of fun, and so I'm not just this angry, racer. I can have a conversation while I'm racing.
You're not blinds on.
A lion,
Right. Is that a hard balance to strike sometimes? In New York City, especially with the women's peloton and the men's peloton, we know each other, right? And you really know each other. Does that, after maybe 2 or 3 strong results or wins, right? Again, I look at your resume, I can't get them all in. You probably know. Did you win the first and second, both of them at the CSCA?
I won the first one, and then the second one, Emily broke away.
That's what I remember.
And then I won the field sprint.
Right, so you got first and second.
Yeah.
At that point, you still want to win, and you're starting to think about, okay, I can maybe go individually for the Boyd Cup too, for the overall, that club internal
and my
competition.
team was behind me in that goal. Yeah.
But did you notice you were being perceived differently by other riders in the peloton? We don't have to mention names, but your status changes, right? From somebody who you had good results. Obviously you're wearing the leader's jersey too.
So, in that second race, actually, I broke away, and I was away for a lap and a half. And what happened was when they caught me, Emily took off, and no one saw her take off.
Right.
And because they were all watching me in my leader's jersey. So I knew that there were laser eyes on me every single race.
Yeah.
And the new riders would try to watch me and see what I'm doing. It does take responsibility. You do feel responsibility of when you're winning and losing, what your attitude is. I'm very good at staying humble. I mean, I would call people out on their BS, but I'm good. I make a mistake, I'm gonna come to you after the race and apologize. I kind of cut you off. I'm sorry.
And I think that's what I mean exactly. It's a really fine line to walk, right? Because you are, just because your success probably being perceived in certain ways, right? Okay, so here's the winner, and you're being watched more, and you're being what you say or do in a race is being being evaluated more critically than if it was somebody who was more anonymous in the field, right? And did you feel that pressure, or because that's already a little bit of pressure I think we can talk about, and then maybe it doesn't compare to the pressure you had when you were performing ballet, but did you feel that? Did you perceive this pressure, or was it for you just enjoying? You were sort of, you didn't think about that?
No, I thought about it. It was a conscious decision that I knew I was kind of a role model for, you know, what I say, what I do. If something were to happen, or you know, things happen in the race, and I say something, I kind of like, oh, that was bad. Like I'm not, you know, I didn't say the right thing, or like I overreacted or something.
Yeah, and nobody says the right thing always, right?
Right.
Because it comes out a different way you intended it to.
And that's
sometimes.
when you like talk to your teammates and go, oh, was it cool? Like, no, I kind of called this person out for doing something. Like, is it going to come back at me? So I was very conscious.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be, you know, like Josh on the men's side now was on Good Guys.
Yeah.
He said in one of those,
one of
those videos, like, I'm happy when I lose and I win, you know? It's like, I'm just there to have fun. And I mean, obviously winning is nice, but I'm really happy for my competitors. I don't see that as a loss for myself. It's like something, okay, that tactic didn't work, or like they broke away, or and I couldn't catch them. You know, there was one race when Christina Grossman broke away with someone, and I worked my butt off to try to catch them.
Sure. Yeah.
And it didn't work out, but then I sprinted, you know, against the girls that were in my breakaway, and still got on the podium. And I was like really happy with that.
Sure.
It's just like, okay, I worked really hard in this race, and she did a great job making that break, and I didn't catch it.
Right. And you learned something from that too, right?
Yeah, every single race you learn something. You think about it. And I think that's also for ballet, like at the more like professional, you make notes of your rehearsals, of what corrections you got from your coach, and so that the next day, the next race, you like have this learning. This teachable moment.
And that's, I was talking to Tiffany, and she's very, I think, organized and methodical and strategic. That's also coming a little bit from her professional life, and I think from your maybe prior, you feel like a lot of that is going through it, practicing it again, learning from what you did before, learning from the mistakes, remembering like things you did, maybe worked that didn't work, and all that. So I see that. You get serious in a good way when you talk about this. Like you're I can feel the sort of the seriousness in that process these processes that you go through, and it seems to be working really well for you. So did that ballet help you in some ways then there, more mentally than physically, or?
Yeah, I think mentally and physically it helped me. With the physical part, I probably am very comfortable with being in pain.
Yeah, that's funny, right? Because like for again somebody who's not a ballet, to be provocative, we just jump around a little bit, right? And everybody knows it's sort of physical, but I don't think people perceive of it as pain. I would think that you're in pain, right? But that is an extreme. You mentioned stress fractures, right? So it's extremely demanding.
Yeah, and a stress fracture like goes on for a long time. So like you're in pain for a long time until it actually breaks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So your feet you get used to. Every day I would wake up and I would be like an old man and old woman on
you mentioned the foam rolling, just
foam rolling every day, lacrosse ball.
Yeah.
Like at that time you didn't have the hyper ice massage.
Oh yes, the
but,
guns.
People have that now. I'm sure.
Yeah. And those are probably good practices for cycling still too, like the rolling up and all that. You still do that.
Yeah.
Do you think, other than that, from a physical point of view, that the sort of more probably more fast twitch kind of, because it's not obviously endurance. You need some endurance, I'm sure, for ballet too, but it's much more quick movements, kind of explosive movements, right?
Yeah.
Does that help with do you think?
I guess it does.
Because I'm sure nobody has said like, oh yeah, if you do ballet, you're gonna be a good cyclist. Probably nobody has studied that, right? So but it seems to not be in the way of things.
Yeah, no, I think if anything
strength,
it improved
right?
me.
Right.
mentally, physically, yeah. I think the fast twitch, that's a good like point. I always thought I'm a good sprinter because when you finish a performance, you like want to finish with all this energy, and you like.
There's similarity, okay? Yeah, I see
so,
that. It's all building up to that.
Yeah, you build it up and then ta-da!
Yeah.
So I think that's why I kind of conserve enough energy to like sprint at the end.
Sure. Yeah. That is also both mental and physical. Yeah. Your body's sort of primed for that a little bit too. Yeah. Talking about these overlaps, I think one that you mentioned, they were very high, and this is we're talking a 21st century where people. Where it's much more out in the open, problems with like nutrition and all that. You mentioned a little bit, and I can't remember if that was the part that we didn't record, but you mentioned some of the stress fractures maybe not completely but maybe being partially due to malnutrition and all that, because they're very high sort of, are they straight up weight standards in ballet, or what is
like they want you to be thin, because your line looks better, you know, like your muscle and body mass gets in the way of the line. There was pressure, and I hadn't had that, education of nutrition. Like it was my family growing up, and we ate salads but we ate carbs and sugar because we were all active. You know?
Yeah.
But then, I moved to New York, and I was just surrounded by people that maybe had hard candies and chocolate, and that's what they lived off of, like and so I started to take these tactics. Like, okay, how can I cut like as much out of my diet as possible?
Yeah.
And got a stress fracture in my first year of moving to New York, learning right away. So then, after I recovered from that, I did focus on bringing in the right nutrition, and I'm able to take that to cycling now. So I'm good at like eating healthy. I don't drink very much, drugs.
Yeah. So that helps.
You can put me on a talk screen, no problem.
Yeah. So that's good. But behind that is, we were just talking about, you're coming from one sport profession that puts so much emphasis and pressure on people to be both strong and skinny, right? And cycling kind of does the same thing, right? The only part that's allowed to be a little bit bigger is kind of a thigh, right, for the cyclist, and then you have these kind of weird specimen women who are like shaped a certain way, at the professional level at least, right? Was that an area of concern for you, or given your prior experience with ballet, you were like, no, I'm actually prepped for that because I have already gone kind of through that kind of environment, and here at least in cycling right now, at least you don't have a coach or team manager who's like, you need to lose X, Y, Z, or you need to look like that way. You don't have, fortunately, I would assume, don't have that pressure.
Yeah. Originally going into racing, I was all alone, so I had just the outlet of looking online at what the expectations were.
Yeah.
And I was really apprehensive of going like, oh, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again, so I'm gonna just, be really careful.
Yeah.
And so, but then when you're surrounded by like teammates or you see other women in the field, like, okay, this is just a hobby, or they keep their nutrition well, but like no one's comparing each other at the start line of what you look like, and so that helped a lot. I know that down the line, like I'll need to affect my body weight a little better, like body fat percentage or whatever.
Yeah.
But the comparison to ballet is like what you look like. It's all about the line that you make.
Yeah.
And you do need to be thin to be lifted and partnered by a male. But with cycling, I like it a lot more because it's all about the power that you put out. So it's not really about what you look like. It's what your body can do. So the only reason you're losing body fat and wanting to be leaner is so that you're faster, like climbing or something.
Sure.
So that does suit me. Like I can really jump on that bandwagon. Like when I'm eating for the day or something, it's like, okay, I that's the goal I'm going for, is feeding my muscles and, you know, what I'm putting in. It's not about how little I'm putting in.
Yeah. That sounds like you have found a pretty healthy relationship with it, but and I think it does sound like, compared to ballet, cycling is, especially at this amateur level that we're, and for the most part, racing at, is more accepting of different body types. And even at the pro level, I think you have some different body types, right? And they might specialize in certain different sub-disciplines of, you know, more the flat stages, more the sprinting, more the climbing and all that. But it is a little bit more accepting of it. And yet, even among the, and again, like, I don't want to, you don't have to share too much about the team dynamics and all that, but there still are conversations, partially because of like the tight clothing that we're all wearing. Like, I think people know, oh, he's looking, and these are conversations I hear, right? Oh, he's looking fit, he's looking slim, right? He's looking in shape and all that. Oh, so and so clearly put on a few pounds and all that. And these are not right.
Like, they because, shape this off-season.
Right, and this is amateur cycling especially, right? Because sometimes family or work life comes in between, or other distractions, or you have a few too many drinks in the evenings, you know, and they're not usually, I would say, mean-spirited, but these conversations and these, it's part of the culture too, I would say. Like, maybe in a different and less intense way, but it's a little bit there too. So, and you mentioned already knowing, okay, if I want to go maybe a more climbing route, I may have to watch at least fat or weight a little bit more. But once again, I think maybe you are more equipped to deal with that, given your background. Do you feel that way, or? Yeah,
and I'm careful about not going down the rabbit hole the wrong way. You know, and I'm comfortable with needing to lose a little bit of weight, and I know how to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not putting that pressure on myself to get really lean again.
Yeah. And this is partially, you're still discovering what you are as a rider in terms of where your real strength. Well, I mean, again, you have lots of strength already, but like, if you were to go the pro route, would you be the sprinter? Would you be the climber? Would you be something in between? Like, would you be a, you know, who knows, time trials, whatever it is, right? But where would you really excel there? Are you still fairly open-minded, or are you the kind of average amateur cyclist who is a little bit of, right now, I want to be good at everything, and ideally I want to be a stage racer, kind of. I think that's like the amateur cyclist. I mean, it's how I started. Like, you start, and even if you're like 6'4" and like, you know, I'm over 200 pounds right now, you think that you want to be like, your dream is still like the Tour de France kind of riders who are like climbing up the mountains and winning, are good at the time trials too. A lot of people feel that way. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, and then they discover, actually, I'm good at this particular thing, or at these kind of races. So, you still haven't reached that point?
Yeah, I still haven't reached that point. I think I want to see what I'm good at, and eventually getting a coach that maybe can kind of like perfect it. Oh no, you have the numbers, or this is what you really should get into. But you know, this past season I hadn't done a time trial, I hadn't done a crit or a stage race.
Right.
But those are things that I had to push myself in because they were part of the stage race. Like, I had to do them. I maybe wouldn't have ever tried those, you know, so, because to me, like, doing the time trial, like, oh, I'm not good enough for that, you know, like, I can't put out numbers for that long, you know, but then when you actually try it, you could see that, you know, I might see that I'm good at that, you know.
Yeah.
So it's still all open right now, and it's not like a dream, like, oh no, I'm going to stick to stage racing. Like, when I get to the point of figuring out what I'm actually good at, like, I would pursue that one.
Sure.
Discipline.
And you mentioned that, okay, so you sort of have nutrition, you could sort of figure it out. You mentioned the next step, maybe getting a new coach who's a little bit more personal, individual coach who has worked, anyway, could help you with that next step, right? So that's part of your next step. You kind of have a plan here in terms of, you said you're already doing off the bike. You have found a program that works for you. That's called
Ever Athlete.
Thank you, Ever Athlete.
Yeah, it's out of California.
They do a lot of online stuff. It's a subscription-based model, right? And you mentioned Kate Cordy is using it for example.
Yeah, she's been working with them since out of Stanford. And then they just made the online program through COVID, and they've been building that up really well this past year.
So you're doing a lot of how many hours?
Strength training.
Do you think a week?
Strength training?
Yeah, and then maybe also the riding so that people
like
get an idea.
2.5. I mean, they make it so that you're not overworking. It's to help improve your on bike.
Right, it should be in the way that you're not recovering from the bike, right? Because you're doing strength training. So 2.5 per week. Like, yeah. And that's
in season, I wasn't doing that much. I was maybe doing like an hour and a half or something.
Yeah, you bring it down a little bit. That makes sense. So you spread out over a few days, or?
Do strength training every other day, and then on the bike training, building up on the bike, like doing VO2 and reg, and then long rides during the weekends when you're not racing. But right now, I'm just, right now, every athlete has a program that's building up to the season. I think it's called like stability.
But foundational kind of.
Yeah, it's foundational. And then it'll start the program of like actually building up your muscles.
Yeah. So, and again, average training week, we all know it's different. The race season is different than it is like in February when you're like, or January when you're really working hard to get the shape. Now it's a little bit different as you're working with more foundations. But how many hours a week do you currently think are you on the bike, riding the bike? Or on average over the year, what's a regular range for me? For me, it's like, let's say, I think between running and cycling, I do like 10 to 12. It depends if I get a long ride. And the long ride can sometimes skew things to the above that, but some in that range, a little bit more.
I think around that range.
Just on the bike.
Just on the bike, like 10 or 12.
Yeah. Is most of that is there like an indoor-outdoor split all the time, or because you do tailwind? Right?
In the winter I would do it on the trainer. And actually this past season, because I got pedals, power pedals, I would do it in Central Park. And it's like, it's a little different, but you still are working really hard and trying to get those numbers. And sometimes overachieve, like when you're going downhill and you're trying to put the power out, it's not going to work. But then when you're going up, Harlow Hill, and you're like, you're trying to get into zone 1, and you're like 200 watts, and you're like, I'm in my lowest gear.
It can't go any slower. Yeah, for sure. That's why it can be frustrating outside too, right? Because especially if you're the person who likes to see the steady line, you're like, there's the downhill, there's the uphill,
But I liked being outside. I think that helped my season-long strength of still enjoying
mentally, right?
Yeah, mentally to race and ride and train all the way until August. So
this winter you're envisioning to be more outside than inside, or
as
the weather allows?
The weather allows. I think winter I would stay inside on my trainer. Especially February. February's typically bad. But probably March, April I'll start to get outside.
Sure. With as race season also starts, hopefully a little bit more doable. But February and January, February are really pretty terrible in New York City. February especially. So 10, 12 hours, let's just say, then a little bit of strength training on top. You mentioned you're currently working sort of like a late shift, so that works pretty well with your schedule. And you get to sleep, and that's
I get to sleep unless I'm waking up early to meet teammates.
Right. That's the New York City life too, right? If you want to have some uninhibited Central Park laps, you got to be there at a certain time. So we've already talked about the next step would be probably getting on a team that can get you to some bigger races or a more diversified racing calendar, right? Not knowing what exactly kind of rider you're going to be, probably something that isn't just USA Crits, but also that maybe extends into your stage race. You want to watch? Thank you. So, do you expect that having had the GMSR experience, you have a lot of people in your, like we've talked about the coach development piece. Is your mom still giving you a lot of kind of feedback? Where are you? You did a lot of research yourself. It feels like it's very much like a lot of it is you and your initiative, although I think there are probably different people and voices in the community, in your team, your family, the coach. They're all sort of Team Galen here, or what, how does that?
Yeah, I'm
Or is
really
it more
well
you're
supported,
driving
yeah.
a lot of that? Is it because that's a big undertaking, and I think it's not like any of these amateur cycling teams here have like the super tight like development structure where you're like it's not like Star Trek, one of the youth programs where you have a coach and he's always telling you the sessions exactly. I think there's a little bit more. There's less structure here, right? For better and worse sometimes. So, but this for right now, this is working pretty well for you. These different people and influences in your life.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of people that are supportive of me going ahead with this. Really asking like, do you really want to do this?
Yeah.
This is a big undertaking. Your life's gonna change.
Right.
You're on the road.
Yeah.
I'm married. I have a dog.
Yeah.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, of course, especially in New York City, right?
Yeah.
When you read about things
Then do we
happening
want to live
here.
in New York if I'm going to be doing this?
Yeah, and that's the thing I always not joke, but I talk about it on more on the men's side too, but also on the women's side. There are practically no pros living in New York City for that reason, like true professional cyclists, because for training it isn't ideal, right? And then partially because the cycling hubs in this country are the places, they're in Colorado and Arizona and California, and then somewhere in the south here on the East Coast a little bit, because you get a little bit more uninhibited riding there, some certain hotspots.
And I don't have a career keeping me here, like I'm not career driven.
Yeah.
So I think going back to California, where my family's from, where I grew up, would like both Southern in San Diego or Northern in the Bay Area would be the goal to.
Yeah. For cycling. For cycling perspective.
Yeah. If I got onto a big team.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because there would probably also be some other teammates out there and all that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, when I see also on the women's side, a lot of the pros, I see like so-and-so lives in California, so-and-so from California or whatever. So you would probably have a little bit more of that there. Do you feel like the CRCA was a good, you're still here, right? So, but do you feel like for somebody in your situation, that's what I'm saying. So I feel like I'm already talking about you already gone. No, you're here. You're here and you're a threat for all the competitors. Do you feel like this kind of obviously affected by COVID experience was a good development experience? Has it been as a new rider, right? For like let's just say your first 2 years, which it is for everybody, was that a positive and overwhelmingly positive experience? Was it also a difficult experience coming in new? You said the development series was pretty good for you, for example.
Yeah.
Do you wish there could have been more support in some ways? Do you think this was overall fairly easy to get into, and it was a really positive experience from a development point of view for you as a new rider?
Right. I think it's how you want to take it. Like if you I personally wanted to have more community because I was riding alone, so I wanted more like coaching. I went to all those Tara coaches, Tara Parsons coaches. I took every opportunity that I could with CRCA, with not being on the team and not having friends on the bike, to like do long rides with. But CRCA does do a good job of the development series. It's an awesome program. I wish more women would get into it, and be not as intimidated as I was for a year or two. It's just for the first year to focus on just having fun with it. I think so. And then if you have the competitive, go for it.
So that was good overall, really. Between the coaching sessions, the development, and then the competitive racing, you feel like you got a really good introduction into the sport.
Cycling sport. I think maybe if I got a coach like I have now, where it gave me workouts and knowing my power, that would have helped me in 2019 first season. But with what I had was just
well, it would be a big commitment, right? As a new rider to invest in a coach or to find someone immediately.
And that is something I've been very good about, little by little getting more committed into it. It's a big financial undertaking when you're first starting. You see everyone have these nice bikes.
Yes.
They're really into it because maybe they've been doing it for 10 years, so they have all of this already established.
Yeah.
But as a new rider, everything still intimidate me about bike racing and bike maintenance. You know, like I'm still learning little by little. Like, yeah. I'm lucky that my brother does all my maintenance currently, and he teaches me things little by little.
Little by little.
Yeah.
I think that's a great approach, because I think also with like accumulating all the equipment, right? I think it's good to maybe not get the power media immediately and see how much you're into it, and in some ways it's also good to maybe learn first to ride without power and a little bit more by effort and all that, and maybe you get some basic shoes first and then you upgrade to some nicer more performance oriented ones.
I was mountain bike shoes.
Right, and then eventually that doesn't cut it anymore for sprinting probably and all that. But
even for like gravel riding that I've been doing, I'm like, oh, these shoes are crap now. Like these are.
You can tell the difference.
Yeah. I need carbon.
Yeah, but you still have the same bike, so that's good.
Yeah, I improved. I upgraded my wheels this season.
Yeah.
And so I carbonized. Yeah, and that's the biggest improvement you can do. And then group set, I'm still racing on Tiagra.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is it's a Specialized, right?
No, it's track.
Track. Okay, sorry. A yellow track, right? It kind of stands out. It's a nice color, and you have a Tiagra on there, mechanical, right? And you have upgraded your wheels, and that's pretty much what you do on that bike. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just like the testament of like just do things little by little. You don't have to jump the bridge. You know, jump off the bridge into getting a $9,000 bike your first season. You are surrounded by people that have those nice things, and it doesn't mean that you need to have them. I think personally also I wanted to prove my determination and my results to get those things, you know.
Sure. Yeah, you can get them now as a reward, like say the wheels for a good season or something.
Yeah, but there's no. I mean, this is also like everyone can treat themselves how they want. You know, get something nice for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. It's not like you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
We're not judging people who buy
don't
a nice bike.
that you're going to be racing against people that have.
Right, and especially financially, if it's a big step for you, maybe you get something that works, and that's good enough to not like constantly get flats or crash or to get mechanical issues, but something that works and that isn't like a significant disadvantage. Like clearly your bike is very competitive, right? And yes, there's obvious things that you could upgrade. Right now in the current, there's nothing available, but
I mean, I wanted to upgrade my group set this year, but then group sets usually you can get them on sale sometimes on eBay and stuff, and now they're not. So that discouraged me from upgrading this year.
Yeah, and if it works, then you might as well wait a little bit longer. We've talked a lot about potential future, and I really hope that once again we have like Evelyn Stevens a few years back, Kristen Faulkner most recently, who you sort of just didn't overlap with, but she was a New York kind of professional banker, I think, I'm trying to remember, and now she is a professional getting really good results in Europe, and that also happened very quickly. So I think it can, once again, maybe a little bit more still on the women's side, where maybe there isn't the sheer volume of riders yet, although there's also much fewer professional spots on teams. It can happen maybe a little bit quicker. So all the best with that I already say. But I want to pick up on a couple more things still. So in terms of, you mentioned a little bit that as a new rider you wanted more community because you were riding individually. Do you find that community that you have found is working well? Is there areas for improvement, or maybe overall in New York City as a place to cycle, as a place to ride your bike, is there obvious? Maybe there are obvious areas for improvement, but what are the ones that you really like strike you as like, this is what I personally really notice all the time, or that's what I feel like needs the most improvement? Whether it's, you can focus on the racing, you can focus on CSCA, you can focus on women's development, you can focus on road safety. What is there something that you always talk about with your teammates or friends or whatever it is? So.
Something that needs to improve. Well, I think bike safety, like the bike lanes have improved a lot since when I moved here and I was on my little folding bike. But the cars being aware of cyclists, I think that's a big safety concern. Having respect for pedestrians, like as a cyclist, is good because they're the ones that maybe have families and are on city boards, you know? So like be respectful, like if you're running a red light, you know, slow down a little bit. I personally hate the delivery, like
bikes.
They're that they aren't even pedaling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm someone like that's cheating. If you're on a bike, you should be pedaling. you know.
This is yeah.
And they ride the wrong way sometimes.
And I see it happen in the park
the scooters too.
Yeah. That is something that I think the city's working on a little bit on regulating, but as with many things, it's so hard to regulate all of that. I mean, we partially enjoy the lack of regulation, right, as we run many stop signs and red lights carefully, hopefully, as cyclists, but we do, right? And but I think there's a give and take, and I think you rightfully point to us also that having to be more careful, like about pedestrians, about people who are more vulnerable as us.
We're pedestrians, and we are lucky to understand how cyclists move and predict them when we're about to cross. So we look, but think about it, if you don't bike in the city, then these darn cyclists. they're gonna kill me one day.
Yeah, and then you see a cyclist coming at you, you may not expect that they know how to get around you safely and that they will do that, right? If you're not a cyclist and you don't trust them. So I think you're right about having to put yourself into pedestrian shoes and people who are more vulnerable in general. And I think we can work on our relationship with drivers too, but that's a whole other story.
Well, what I was hoping through COVID was more people got on bikes that were maybe on, as pedestrians themselves or in cars, and now they're like on city boards and they have a little leeway and they're like, okay, I'm gonna help make it safer for families and for myself as commuting and work.
Yeah. I think we might see that slowly trickle down.
Like my blind hope.
Yeah. We have.
I also hope that people would buy nice bikes and then I would get there. I refused to buy bikes at the start of COVID, so I was like, someone's going to be getting rid of this.
I think you will see that, but I think it's sort of like with some of the housing market, like you might have to wait 2 years instead of like this off season, unfortunately. I still see websites like Pros Closet charging rather high prices, or eBay for not the best used bike, or you can charge a lot for a used bike, especially if it's even a decent quality these days. And I think
it's still a shortage.
It's not the time to buy. So get that pro contractor bike. No pressure.
That is the next step.
That is the next step.
On a team that will give you a bike and pay for my travel and registration.
And you'd be a happy camper, right?
Yeah. At this point in the game, I would be a happy camper with that.
And that is big, and I think that is not to be underestimated, right? Because it is that allows you to go to races and get opportunities and show yourself. Because once again, New York City is great for racing. You can get even also in the women's field a lot of races, right, compared to other places. But it is its own microcosm, and you may not get noticed by getting. I don't want to be flipping you, but no matter how many wins in New York City, in Central Park you get, I don't know if it gets the same exposure than getting a top 10 at like a USA Prince race or GMSR at third place, right? I think that's what you need to do when you start to do it, which is great. All the best of luck with that. I had one more thing that I was going to say, but maybe we're going to end awkwardly here, so that's fine too.
That fits me.
2020, let's just assume that that's what it was. I know that you leave the door open for maybe there a team coming and saying we can help you with what we just said. Maybe that's one scenario, maybe the other scenario is another full season with Rockstar, full steam, kind of repeating what you achieved this year, which is no small feat either. That would be a lot of pressure too, and maybe there's going to be a fuller racing calendar here too. I think going to have bigger time races like that.
Other teams are already building up their teams really strong,
I'm actually, there's a new team, the Good Guys team has started Good Gals now, kind of a women's equivalent. I'm on the outside, but I'm seeing the women's field getting more competitive or lively. Is that fair to say? It looks like there's a lot of excitement there a little bit, or competition. That's good.
The big influx of women riding was through COVID, that really fed from offshore,
a lot of these 100 or so women started racing, and then several of them have now found other teams that they join.
And that was always the idea,
And that's fantastic, right? That has really, and we hope that it continues to be a sort of development and feeder team for some of the teams that are more maybe just racing oriented and more comparative, like your team Rockstar, right? Like other teams, and and I think several of these women have rejuvenated or started kind of other racing teams, like the George, for example, and all that. So when I see that, we have seen bigger performance fields, I think, this year, maybe, and I think next year maybe even bigger. Yeah. And that will make it more.
And they're going to have better experience because they're going to be on these other teams. I think that's a huge advantage of like the Austria team. They we're all just racing against each other oftentimes.
Right.
So going into these better, well-established teams that have more experience, they're going to be awesome. Like, it's really exciting.
I agree. I think it's going to be making for some lively racing. And so that it's not like
and then it'll be like a situation where it was for me, where no one really saw me coming, and it's going to we'll see what my chances are next season because there's going to be awesome women.
I agree. I think you'll step it up, but others will step it up too. And I think that is great when it raises the overall quality. I think I've seen that a little bit on the men's side too over the last 2-3 years, and this year COVID again is always a little different, but it's really
bring more men into racing.
Yes, I think so too.
Okay.
I think that will trickle a little bit more slowly than the women's field, maybe into the A or the 1-2-3 field, but it has already, and I think we've seen good numbers and new people, especially because it's one thing of the same people in return, which is good, which should be happening too, but fresh blood is really good for the scene too, and some people who like you come in with ambition but also maybe a different mindset, and it really, that rejuvenation for the scene is really important. I think you're right that COVID has been positive there in New York City, and in terms of the racers and riders getting into it, and we hope that we can bring that enthusiasm into 2022 as well. So, assuming one or the other scenario, what are maybe, do you have some bucket list races that you want to do well at? What are some dream scenarios? What are, again, it's put a lot of pressure on yourself to say, I want to win that race, so maybe you don't have to do that. But do you know already, all right, you went to GMSR, check, is that go back to GMSR or go back to, are there other races that you have on your, it's not November yet, you said November you want to talk about your goals, but you're thinking about probably, starting to think about 2022. And what are some of those races or some of those competitions that you want to do?
Yeah, there were a lot of races that I didn't even get the chance to race because they weren't happening this past year.
Right.
So I think there's like Killington race.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be cool. I think that's like a 2-day race.
I think it's 3, but it's not 4. Yeah, I think I've never done it, but I think it's 2 road stages and then a time trial or something like that.
Yeah. So Killington. The Catskills, there's a women's race.
Yeah, okay.
But these races that I didn't get a chance to do, I want to try to do this next year. Do GMSR.
I hear a lot of longer, hard races, so...
Yeah.
Not the crits. Yeah, maybe some of those too, but you like the appeal of the stage races, right?
Yeah, I mean, I should do crits as well, but definitely not going to do those like really big ones unless I'm on a team,
Yeah, and they're harder to get to, and
you need. I think it really is an advantage to have a team. I think it's
Absolutely. Even also just people being there on the ground with you that can help you, like even just watch the bike for a minute or whatever it is, right? So absolutely. Again, all the best of luck with that. Thank you for being here. I think it's going to be exciting to see what happens next year, both in the overall competition at CSCA and other women's races in the area. I think you're looking forward to it, and then that's a really positive thing. And congratulations once again on what you've already accomplished. I should have asked you to bring your latest jersey, the Boyd Cup winner.
Oh yes.
And see, I didn't ask you to, so you don't have to bring it. It's just a really nice jersey. I think the kind of rainbowish colored.
It's
so
beautiful.
It's beautiful. I really think. It's so easy to be critical of pit lines and all that. It's an absolutely beautiful leaders jersey, and I've enjoyed seeing that.
It went well with my leg, so it was made for me.
There you go. So you got to keep it in 2022. Best of luck with that. Best of luck with the other goals, and then maybe at some point we can reconnect and follow up on those. Thank you, Galen.
Thank you, Constantine.